Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for one or two more people to get joined in here, and then we will have Brooke get started. Thank you for joining us. Okay, I'll go ahead and pull up the presentation if you want to introduce yourself, Brooke.
Hi, everybody. My name's Brooke Martin, and I have been working in early childhood for the past 15 years or so, and I'm really passionate about speaking and learning about the early years. Today, I'm just going to talk about how strong attachment can really help your child navigate the rocky road of toddlerhood. So we're going to talk a lot about really the foundation of attachment and how that starts. We're going to talk about temperament and how that will affect how your child approaches the toddler years. And then we're going to talk about activities and ways that you can connect to your child and activities that will contribute to regulation during the toddler years. What typical behavior might look like in these years, and then what to do and what resources might look like if you feel like your child might be showing really outlying behaviors. And then I want to leave plenty of time to ask questions and allow you to bring up situations for problem solving. So we'll talk about that at the end. So really, attachment starts at the beginning, the thought of your child. It really starts in your own attachment style and what you bring to parenting and what you bring into your relationships. So there's really three main attachment styles that we'll talk about. There's secure attachment, which is a spectrum where you might, ebb and flow in your ability to feel close and distant in your relationships. There's people who have been through more trauma in their life, and they might experience more avoidance in their relationship and really not feel comfortable feeling super close to people. They might get feelings like they just feel really uncomfortable when they're in a relationship or when their child is seeking a lot of affection from them, or a partner seeking a lot of affection or the desire to really enmesh. And then the other kind would be more insecure in the opposite way, where a child or a partner might show a lot of anxious attachment. And so this is when a partner or a child really is needing to be near their parent or partner a lot and really need a lot of reassurance that that partner or caregiver is going to be there for them. And so at each stage of childhood, these different types of attachment, they would be appropriate. But some kids really show one of those versions much more extremely. And so we want to think about that as we're talking about attachment. And we want to think about what maybe your own attachment style is. Do you lean one way towards avoidant or one way towards secure, avoidant, and anxious? Do you lean more towards anxious or avoidant or more secure? So then that starts to shape the relationship that you have with your baby. Are you starting to feel positive feelings towards this child, this fetus? Does something happen during pregnancy that shifts your feelings towards your baby? Do you feel a lot of stress during your pregnancy regarding something that is going on with the baby, or just something that's going on environmentally? And if you do, that can increase the cortisol levels in your body, which then increases the cortisol levels in your baby's body. And then that starts to shift the neurodevelopment of your baby. So children who are born with high cortisol levels, they may show different post-birth types of neurodevelopmental responses. They may be hyper aroused. They may have a harder time soothing. They just may start to show those early responses where they're just not as easy to calm. And so that's true for kids who have just had more exposure to cortisol in the womb. So then once the baby's born, we think about other factors that would affect attachment. Was the birth experience smooth? Did the birth plan, were the doctors able to follow that birth plan? Or was it very stressful or traumatic? That can affect attachment if the baby is removed right away from the mother or the parent and taken to the NICU. This can very much affect attachment because mother is not involved in all of those cares right away. It can create some insecurity between mother and child. You know, is my baby going to be okay? Is my baby going to be alive? And then baby doesn't get the chance to bond with mother as quickly and as easily. There can also be medical trauma that's involved there. And then how is mom doing health-wise and with mental health right after birth? If there's post-traumatic stress, or if there is postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, that can affect the bond with baby. And here I just listed, you know, that secure, avoidant, and anxious styles. And so I'm saying all this to recognize that everything that comes in to kind of interject with secure attachment is going to mean that we're going to have to work harder on the other side to rebuild that secure attachment. It doesn't mean that attachment is ruined and it's permanently ruined. It just means that we're going to have to rebuild those building blocks towards secure attachment. And so we don't want to think of it like if things aren't perfect and we're not always unstressed and we're not always living happily with no issues in life, then our child isn't going to be affected, and that's how it always needs to be. Life is going to happen and traumas are going to happen. It's just a matter of making sure we're rebuilding that connection on the other side. So the next piece that I think is important to consider when we're thinking about managing behavior and thinking about our connection to our child and our ability to bond with our child is their temperament. And so there are 9 pieces that go into thinking about temperament. There is activity level. Is your child really, really active, or are they happy to just kind of lay in their crib and look at the ceiling and play with their toys for a while when they wake up in the morning? Can they sit on the potty and read a book, for 5 or 10 minutes, or are they just always running around and it's hard for them to sit still? Do they go from 0 to 60, from mad to sad, or intense joy, or are they kind of even keel, like they experience those emotions, but it's just like really easy going? What does regularity look like for them in terms of their biological functions? Like, do you know every day they're going to have a bowel movement at 3 p.m., or are they kind of the child that just every day looks a little bit different? In terms of sensitivity, you may have heard pediatricians talk about the difference between the orchid and the dandelion. The orchid is the very sensitive, very easily affected by other emotions. This is the toddler where one toddler cries and then they start crying. So they're not quite ready to experience empathy because they're so affected by the other child. They feel those feelings. Their change in environments, if you change the environment or the routine, it's very difficult for them. And they can be easily overloaded by sensory stimuli. So if it's too bright or there's too much loud noise, it can be really difficult for them. Whereas the dandelion is just like a mover and shaker, a tumbler, really under registers everything, just mowing over the group, and can pretty much, fall asleep on the floor in the middle of it all. That would be the dandelion. And approachability, how does the child receive other children or people? Do they go up to them and initiate contact, or do they stay back and kind of hang on your leg? Adaptability, how does the child respond to change? Are they pretty resilient, or is it difficult for them to adjust? Persistence, can a child stick with a puzzle or a game and keep trying even if they get it wrong, or are they pretty quick to give up? And mood, how quickly are their moods changing from one mood to another? And I think about this because when we're thinking about behavior, we want to remember that what looks like difficult behavior for the orchid is going to look very different from what looks like difficult behavior for the dandelion. So that's why there's considered a range of typical behavior. And it's really going to depend on your child's temperament when you are considering, what we want to think about for typical behavior. Yeah, does anybody have any thoughts or questions so far? You're all being so quiet.
Again, I think for me, it's just understanding that each person, whether they're young or old, have their own temperament and their own personalities that is innate to them, and to understanding that is something I think as when I was a new mother versus, as I've gotten older and learned, to understand is very valuable.
So talking about normal behavior, I think we want to think about behavior in the umbrella of, thinking about what does attachment look like? What is the child's temperament? What is their environment like? And what are the cultural expectations? So before we go thinking about shifting the actual behavior of the child or expecting the child's behavior to change, have we considered all of these pieces? I think some families are shocked to hear, I served on a child find evaluation team for several years, evaluating kids birth to age 5 for services. And some families are really shocked to hear that a tantrum up to 30 minutes is considered within a typical range for tantrums at the toddler age. What we think about when we're screening for early childhood mental health challenges is the child able to recover? That is the piece that we're really honing in on. So if the child has a tantrum and gets aggressive, maybe throws things, maybe hits mom, maybe slams the door, kicks the wall, but they're able to recover within that 30-minute period of time, with a little help maybe from mom or a blankie or a binky, there is much more potential and hope for that child than the child who has a 30-minute tantrum and isn't able to fully recover, continues to sob, and does that thing where they're not able to catch their breath, like and goes on and is really irritable, and then it leads into another tantrum. Those children who aren't able to fully recover are the ones that we have much more concerns about. So it's really not about the actual tantrum. It's about the recovering and the reconnecting to the parent. Is the child and parent able to come together, have some reconnection time, a hug or some cuddling, and everybody gets re-regulated together? Mom is feeling calmer, babies or toddlers feeling calmer. And that is an example of, a really healthy reconnection after a difficult tantrum or misbehavior. Also, most child psychologists would say that the tantrums are a healthy expression of emotion and they serve a purpose. They release cortisol. So we don't want to get rid of tantrums altogether. We want parents to know that some amount of tantrums are healthy and normal. And so some parents don't recognize that that is true, and they're very concerned when all of a sudden they have an 18-month-old who's tantruming for maybe 5 times a day, and that child was previously a fairly happy infant. So recognizing that those tantrums serve a purpose, they're releasing stress hormones for this little toddler who all of a sudden is having big feelings and doesn't know what to do with them. And knowing what the healthy expectation is for a child this age. And then I just wrote this here. If you feel like your child is just in that constant irritable, unable to soothe, cranky, sad place all of the time, all through toddlerhood, that is a sign that something else could be happening. This could be true for kids who are going through medical issues or have medical trauma. This could be a sign of other developmental issues. And it also could be a sign of depression or PTSD in some young children who have experienced significant trauma. And it's helpful to get them support and help so that, they're not having to struggle with such big emotions when they're so young. So just like I was talking, the path to helping build healthy regulation for your child and the path to helping them learn to self-regulate when they get older is by helping them learn to co-regulate with you right now. And the buffer for trauma, the buffer for stress, for young children is connection with you. So the more you can spend time engaging in activities like these, the more you're going to buffer the stress that they experience out in the world. So these are just some techniques that you can utilize to try and build connection, because really a toddler's sole purpose is to try and individualize. So they really don't want to build connection and follow your directions or do what you want them to do. So while you're trying to build connection with them, they're trying to run the other direction, which can sometimes be challenging. So I just wrote some tips of the trade. Like, instead of giving your child, an idea of yours, like, hey, buddy, let's go put on your pajamas. Making sure that you give them lots of opportunity to have control of their own bodies. So things like, do you want daddy or mommy to brush your teeth tonight? Instead of telling them, I'm going to brush your teeth for you. And then talking about your feelings a lot, your own and theirs. Happy and sad feelings, not just happy feelings, but really helping them identify their own feelings, because they've taken a big leap into toddlerhood. All of a sudden, their brain has started developing. All of these parts, the emotion part of their brain, the language part of their brain is exploding now, and they're feeling things and they're building these complex ideas that they weren't doing in infancy. And it can be quite overwhelming, I think, to be a young toddler and to be experiencing all of these brain jumps in development, language wise and emotion wise, and have no words for it. It's like no one teaches you, hey, that thing you're feeling where your head feels like it wants to explode and you can't breathe and everything's turning red and hot, that's called mad. Like, nobody tells you that. So to be able to tell our children, hey, there's a word for that. And you know what? Mommy feels it too. And it's not, you shouldn't be shamed for feeling that. Like, it's okay to feel that. And let me tell you what you can do when you feel that. Like, these poor kids, like, nobody tells them that. So it's really, we get to be the guides to help show them, you don't have to be alone in this chaotic world of toddlerhood. We're going to help you understand what these new feelings are, and we're going to show you what you can do with them, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And I think trying to have some empathy for what it might feel like in their little bodies to be experiencing these things for the first time, and really have no adult be guiding them on what it feels like and what these emotions are called. So we start to shift our language to, hey, like, I see you're feeling really, really mad, and that's okay. It's okay to feel mad, but it is not okay to hit mommy. And some people think that all of this attachment talk and this talk about setting limits, is a bunch of woo-woo stuff, and it's not behaviorist and it's not going to change anything. But you can definitely be connected to your child and also set very firm boundaries. You can be empathetic. You can tell them and show them with your face and your voice that you get why they are pissed. You wanted to eat 10 cookies last night and you did. Nobody stopped you, but somebody is stopping your child from eating 10 cookies and they are pissed. Like, you could get that. And it's just like, I'm sorry, I'm still the boss maker. And you also don't get to have 10 cookies. So you can do those two things simultaneously. And I think some people don't understand that. They think in order to set a firm limit, you have to be a not very nice person. And I think you can be a compassionate, loving parent and set a very firm limit. So that is a practice right there that I am challenged with every day. How can I be that compassionate, loving parent? And not in a cheesy way, like really get that my child is so sad that she cannot bring her dinosaur to school again today. And how disappointing that has to be when you just got this dinosaur for your birthday. And be so clear that that is just not happening. So that's my spiel. Okay, ways to regulate your child. Really trying to keep a regular schedule. So for toddlers, it's like their brain is exploding and they thrive on consistency. So if you can try to mimic the daycare schedule, if they go to daycare, that is ideal. If you can mimic what their nap time looks like, that is ideal. If they don't go to daycare and you have a schedule during the week, and then you both partners are home on the weekend and it's like, it goes to mayhem, really try to keep that same schedule, because it gives them a sense of predictability. And the more that children have this sense of predictability, the more safety they feel. And safety leads to security, and security leads back to safety. So it's really circular. Rhythmic movement. This is true for babies. It's true for adults. And it's definitely true for toddlers. I think sometimes we think, well, my toddler's not a baby anymore, so I'm not going to do the things that I did with them when they were a baby. But your toddler still needs some of the things that their baby self needed. And sometimes they need soothing and regulation the way their baby self needed it. Sometimes your toddler needs to be held like a baby, because there is this little social emotional being in there that does not have a prefrontal cortex yet, that does not know how to self-regulate, and that still needs you to help them. So if you can baby wear and they're not too big and they're 18 months to 2.5, I advise you to still baby wear sometimes while you're cooking dinner or while you're in the backyard. They can have that closeness with you. They can have a little bit of rhythmic movement. It's like their neurological system, especially if they have had any trauma right after birth or in utero, any trauma, they will really benefit from that additional soothing. And you have to think about, what is your child's developmental age? So even if your child is 2 or 3 chronologically, what is your child developmentally? If your child developmentally is any younger than that, think about what your 18-month-old or 12-month-old chronologically, a typically developing child would still need. That 12-month-old would still be getting rocked and would still be getting carried and baby worn, and would be getting a lot of touch and connection. So we don't want to forget about that, because it's a big part of, building the blocks of secure connection if your child lost any of that in the months right after birth or in utero. Another way to utilize rhythmic movement is to have the child lay on the floor on their back, and you push their feet while you rock back and forth and sing, row, row, row your boat, gently down the stream, and you sing that whole song. And this kind of movement gives the child this proprioceptive input, which is very calming to the body. I do this with all my nephews, and they can't wait till Auntie Brooke comes to visit because their body just craves it, and they're typically developing. But it's the same kind of movement that you get from jumping on a trampoline, jumping on a bed. And this rhythmic movement can just be very calming to the system. And it's an activity that you do together. So there's a lot of research that this sensory motor movement that happens between parent and child is just a great bonding activity. And when you place it with this movement, it's also calming to the physical body. So this is a great thing to do if you come home and your child is really dysregulated after school, after daycare, during the witching hour, when your child is really needing your attention and you're getting ready to cook dinner. You could do this right before you cook dinner. This is a great thing to do when your child is just like really hyperactive because they're overtired before bed. Anytime, and big kids too. Big kids will love this. Make sure you give lots of input in the bottom of the feet, and you know, you can rock the whole body back and forth. So making time for fun play, jumping on the bed. I love to play. My daughter loves, like, she asked me to wrap her up like a burrito. So, you know, I put the blanket and roll her up in it, and then I give her squishes, deep pressure squishes. This is all proprioceptive input. We play this game together, and that's our time where we're connecting, and it's sensory motor connection together. And you just have to be careful that this doesn't become too much of rough house play. Like if you start to notice aggression, or your child's running away, or there's like they're changing the activity, or it becomes screaming or chaos, then this is time to like bring it down a notch, turn down the lights, maybe turn on some calming music, and shift the activity, because the goal isn't to get everyone too overstimulated. The goal is to have the activity level enough that we're enjoying play together and having fun together. And then we're also able to co-regulate together. And so co-regulating is being at this stage where our bodies are not overstimulated and not understimulated. So right in the middle. Deep squishes with pillows. So I like putting the pillow over Lila's chest and tummy, and then I will put my arms like this and squish on her. That's another fun activity that gives proprioceptive input. And then as you rev up together, make sure you're making time to calm down. And that looks different for every child and family. Sometimes that looks like cuddling up on the couch and putting on a movie. Now, most OTs and pediatricians would recommend not putting on any type of blue wave, like TV or tablet time. I think it's like 3 or 4 hours before bedtime, because it really can interfere with sleep. There's lots of research around that. So if it's anywhere near bedtime, try and avoid tablet or TV. But you could do music. There's lots of great meditation sounds, and I don't know what they're called, but on the Calm app, you can do kids meditations, and you can do those together as a family. That's like a really nice calming activity to come back down on. But basically, all of these are things to do when your child is being disobedient, unruly, agitated, hyperactive, in the middle of a tantrum, about to have a tantrum, just got over a tantrum. At any time when you feel like things are on edge, these are activities that you can do with your child that's going to change up the dynamic, shift the regulation in your child's body and your own, and really kind of just shift the whole dynamic so you can start over again. So I wrote a little piece about handling aggression and anger, and I know everyone has their ideas about how to do this. And so take this all with a grain of salt. But there is a lot of research that being able to stay connected with your child is very important when they're acting out their frustration on you. I think especially in toddlerhood, in that isolating your child kind of teaches them that when you misbehave or act badly, then I am going to punish you. And so my philosophy is that there should be natural consequences for things, and that we need to teach our children and model for them safe ways for handling anger. And by just punishing them for the ways that we don't like them to handle anger, we don't show them the ways that we want them to handle anger. So I really like the idea of having a calming space in your home. For our home, I have a 7-year-old and she has a tent in her room, and it has a lot of stuffies and pillows, and it's a very comfy, a lot of those squishmallows. It's a very comfy, safe place to be. So there's nothing she can hurt herself on in there. And when she's getting aggressive, she pretty much takes herself there now, but that's somewhere where we guide her or take her and say, if you can't be safe, mommy is going to try and keep you safe, and you need to go be safe in your tent. But I don't ever close the door, especially for my daughter. She's a foster child. So isolating her and closing the door would increase her abandonment issues. So if you have a child who's anxiously attached, isolation could really intensify their fears that if I don't behave properly, or I show anger, or I don't do the things that you like, you will abandon me. That's really hard for a child who has anxious attachment. So moving your child to the calming space. So if you had a toddler, maybe having that calming space in the living area and saying hitting is not safe and mommy is helping you to stay safe. So you need to go to the calming space. And then you would stay close, but you would not allow them to hurt you. So you would sit them down in the calming space and then move away and maybe sit on the couch if the child stayed in the calming space. If they didn't, you would sit at the door of the calming space to keep them in there. If they kept hitting you, you would have to keep moving and maybe like keep some pillows between you and the child so the child couldn't actually hit you. And just keep putting them back in the calming space and saying, you can come out when you can have safe hands. You're not being safe right now, so you need to stay in the calming space. These are just some resources. The Nebraska Child Find is for children birth to 3 who have significant developmental delays. So if you suspect that your child or a child you're working with has significant developmental delays or significant behaviors, like what we talked about today, they would be a good referral. You can make a referral online. And then if you just have questions about parenting, or you have a child that you're concerned about, but you don't think they have significant delays, you can call Help Me Grow Nebraska at 211, or go online and make a referral at helpmegrownebraska.org. And just remember, it's so hard to do this when we're overwhelmed with so much, with jobs and trying to make all the right choices with our children and trying to be the best parents we can be. But I love this picture because it shows, the mirror neurons of when dad is happy, baby is happy. And this is really true. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's like, actually, if my daughter is happy, I'm happy, but that might be the mother of a special needs child speaking. And maybe the mothers and fathers of toddlers speaking too. But regardless, we have an effect on each other. And if you can just, savor those moments when they're smiling and you're smiling, because that is when the oxytocin is kicking in, and that is when the secure attachment is building, and that is the butter that is going to protect you both when the stress hits. We have to have storage of that oxytocin because it's what keeps us going. And I love this picture too. But it's just really important as a parent to remember that the seeds that you're planting, these seeds that take a ton of work and so much energy and so much reflection, the plant is not going to bloom right away. Sometimes you get those moments where you're like, yes, that was a parenting point. And then, sometimes, of course, we're not going to see till much later, but have faith that you are planting the right seeds. So I'd like to open up to you guys and get feedback about anything I said that, you have questions about, or your own personal journeys, anything you'd like to problem solve.
Hi, Brooke. This has been really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a 2.5 and a 4.5-year-old, and they're both boys, and they're very wild, and they're both neurotypical, and they're all healthy, which I'm grateful for, but they're very different in how they have been, I guess, acting through toddlerhood. Our second is very sassy and very, I didn't notice that with our first at all, but like, I don't love you. And he will actually use these very like hurtful, or just straight out be very sassy, which I find interesting that our first didn't do that. But his tantrums have kind of been picking up as well. So I'm just trying to eat up all these tips, and I'm using different strategies that I didn't have to use with our first, or maybe I was just too busy with the newborn to notice, or he didn't, the older one didn't even have the stage to perform on like, our baby does, because we had that newborn. But yeah, this has all been really helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think the first thing that I would ask is, has anything really changed in your family situation recently?
No, I mean, I feel like the tantrums have picked up since my husband and I went on a trip. It was just 3 nights away. But I feel like things have picked up since returning, which is,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, first time away from you, that can be an adjustment. Not a trauma per se, but a little bit of stress there. And so I think, sometimes we have to get to the bottom of what our child's really trying to say. So when he's getting sassy with you, I think about, really doing some deep, full thought searching about what is he really getting at? And I wonder, if you could sit down with him and, talk to him a little bit and just say, I've been noticing that you've been having some big feelings, some big mad and sad feelings ever since mommy went on that trip. And I'm wondering if that was scary for you. These are words that, giving words to what he experienced is going to help release it for him. And say, I want you to know mommy always comes back, and it's okay if that was scary for you. Mommy's back now. And maybe that would help like resolve a little bit of that. I wasn't sure, you left and now I'm mad.
Yeah. Because we were on 2 nights last fall, but I think he was too little to like get it. But now it just, I think he's still kind of mad at me.
Yeah.
He felt betrayed.
Giving the words, it's like it will suddenly dissipate.
Thank you. I'm going to try that with him.
Yeah.
Hands.
Yeah. And if he wants to, the other thing I could recommend you do is like have a little, do a little play session with maybe some of his teddy bears or dinosaurs or something, and be like, oh, look, dinosaurs mommy's going away, but look, dinosaur mommy's coming back. Oh, dinosaur was mad, but dinosaur's not mad anymore. So you can do a little play act of that happening, and he'll just think that's so funny. And like, so it'll be so powerful because it's like, oh, look, you played out what happened and now mommy's back and I don't have to be scared anymore.
Yeah, like I understand what he went through and I'm acknowledging that. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I'm gonna try that.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was just wondering if you could touch on that 30%.
Oh, yeah. I didn't.
That was very helpful.
Yeah, I need to have it in the slide. So I was just saying that sometimes I would learn all this stuff about attachment and I would feel so overwhelmed with like, oh, I'm doing so much as a mother, and how am I going to be so responsive and connective with my child? And then I read some research that said that for a parent to really meet the quota to build healthy and secure attachment, the parent, mom or dad, only needed to respond and connect to the child 30% of the time. So I felt like this really, put it in context. Like that seems way more reasonable than like always having to be there and always having to like, what if, she falls and I'm on the phone and then I failed as a parent. It's like, this is much more doable. And help me, just put that in perspective. Like I could do 30%. Yeah.
Oh, what I was saying, I was on mute. It's a lot less pressure. Like, okay. Like, it's not, we don't have to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anybody else? Let's see, we got a chat message. Can you tell us more about the Calm app or music resources, please? Yes. Okay, so the Calm app you can get through iTunes, and there's a whole kids meditation resource. My daughter just likes to put on Spotify kids meditation. That's cheaper than the Calm app. to be honest. Kids meditation music. She also just likes to listen to her princess songs. So you could like, talk to your child about, and even do like an exploratory time together where you get your phone or your iPad and go through on Spotify or whatever, Apple Music or whatever your account is, or YouTube, and just explore what kind of music makes you feel happy, and try and find some of that. And then what kind of music makes you feel calm, and try some of that. So you could get different ideas, and then you could use the happy music when you're doing some of that sensory motor play, and then switch it to the calm music when you guys need to, re-regulate and calm down together. But it's gonna depend per child, right? What I think is calming for me, my daughter might be like, that's weird, mom. So, and I'm sure your 2-year-olds will have an opinion too. Kids are really in tune to what they like and what they don't like. So that's what I recommend trying. And then some kids may really like the sound of your voice. I think if you've sung to your kids when they were babies and they like to have you sing, that's a wonderful way to bring those lullabies back into their toddlerhood. I think sometimes we think as parents that like, okay, once they're toddlers, we talked about this, they don't need those things from their babyhood anymore. But that is really hard, I think, for toddlers. They feel like they still want some of those things from their infanthood. And so as much as you can still bring some of those rituals from their infanthood into toddlerhood, this is going to meet that social emotional need from them to still have that bond with you. The quicker we push them towards independence, the quicker we, push them out of the nest, the more anxiety they're going to feel about finding their own independence. So it's actually, the opposite of what you think to be true. Anybody else?
If there are no more questions, I'm just going to put up a quick poll, just 2 questions. If you guys wouldn't mind